confrontation with a patient who is not aware of what's going on.
The difference here being instead of being asking questions and such and requesting information, you're now making a statement.
You're making a statement, and you're not doing it in an aggressive manner. All right. Interpretation. What is interpretation?
Kind of like reflection.
Kind of like what?
Reflection.
Reflection?
Restating what the patient said.
Do you think that interpretation...
Just to clarify.
Yeah. So interpretation is kind of parts reflection, kind of parts clarification, but it's more of a summary. So your patient's been talking to you for 5 minutes about their difficulty breathing. How are you going to summarize that? What is an explanation?
Where you offer material to the patient that will further describe what you're going to do with them or add information to what is happening. It's an informational thing.
It's an informational thing, and it should also be factual.
Would be like, you think when you do all this stuff, so like, this is what I think's wrong with you, and then you explain to them, this is why I think it's wrong with you. Okay.
If you have that much time. And what is the summary?
Telling the patient the care you're going to provide.
Tell the patient the care you're going to provide. So you're going to summarize what's going on.
So it's an overview.
And then you're going to explain what you're doing about it. You still running? Yeah?
Says it is.
Interesting. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Maybe it was just my SD card causing it to stop at 32 minutes and 27 seconds. All right, what are some of the golden rules to help calm and reassure a patient?
Be honest.
Honesty. Honesty is pretty important. Do you think your patient knows if you're lying or not?
Yeah. That's a good idea.
They probably have a pretty good idea if you're lying or not, right? How about eye contact? Think eye contact's important?
Body language.
Body language? What about giving the patient your name?
Also how you address them.
Also how you address them.
Mr. Smith or,
Sir,
Mrs.
ma'am.
Sermon.
Yeah, address them respectfully. What else?
Speak in their language.
Okay, speak in a language that they can understand, or speak in language that they can understand. Don't use medical terminology, for example, for most of your patients. Some of your patients will understand medical terminology. You might have a doctor or a nurse or another EMT who happens to be your patient, but most bystanders, most of your patients aren't going to understand medical terminology. So use language that they understand. What else?
Don't communicate the patient's problems with other people unless you have their permission.
Okay, watch what you say about the patient. Why can this cause your patient to distrust you?
I mean, if they don't want somebody in their family to know the things, and you're just off telling everybody in the room who's listening, then they just think you're going to tell everybody everything, basically. So then they might not tell you things that they don't want other people to know.
Yeah. Why else?
You walk into their place while they're having a problem, they've called you to help, and then you kind of make the sidebar comment, boy, this place looks like a mess. You may have just embarrassed the patient and caused them to not, all of a sudden you've lost something.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be causing your patient stress, and that's not our goal there. Then the last one, there's a couple more, but the one that I think is the most important is calm and confident. I'll say this 60 more times before our class is over. Fake it till you make it. If you don't know what you're doing, don't let your patient know that you don't know what you're doing. Okay? Let's talk about communicating with people who are special populations. So first, let's talk about geriatric. What are some of the special considerations when we're talking to geriatric patients?
They may be hard of hearing, so speak to them so they can possibly read your lips. Don't shout at them.
Your level of respect is going to get measured in a different way too, because they're older folks, and they expect different things than the younger generation.
Respect is measured differently. We need to give them time to respond to our questions. Allow them to gather their belongings if they can. We need to be patient with them.
Don't ever assume anything about them.
Don't make any assumptions. Okay. What about pediatric patients?
I mean, you're gonna have to assume their parents are gonna want to be involved, so you'll have to possibly communicate things with the children and their parents.
Okay. What else?
Don't use baby talk unless it's an actual baby.
Don't use baby talk. What else?
They're gonna be typically more frightened, so you're gonna have to try and be extra thorough to calm them down, I guess.
They're going to be scared. They're going to be scared because they're hurt in the first place. They're going to be scared because you showed up in a big truck that has lights spinning around on it. The siren's kind of loud. They're going to be scared because of your uniform. They're just going to be scared in general. And so you have to take a little bit of extra time with them to try and help calm them down. If it's possible and there's a family member nearby, you should keep that family member with them. It can help to reassure them. Again, with children, we have to be honest. They're super, super perceptive. Way more perceptive than we give them credit for. Make sure you let them know ahead of time if something's going to hurt. And don't lie to them about it.
Don't position yourself, possibly lower, like at their level. So you're
Yeah,
not
you might want to put yourself at their level. And make sure that you respect their modesty. What about people who are hard of hearing?
Possibly have pen and paper so they can write. Or
Hey, you might
can
want to have a
write,
pen and paper.
so you can write, I guess.
Make sure that your face is visible to them, because as you speak, they may be able to read your lips.
Yeah, don't overmouth the words.
Over mouth. Is that in the dictionary?
Use, try to explain it. Yeah.
What else?
Don't shout.
Pardon?
Don't shout.
Don't shout. Yeah, back over here to geriatric patients who have problems with hearing. Don't shout.
Look for the presence of any hearing aids that they may either be wearing or maybe that they're not wearing. Make sure they come with you when you transport.
If you do know sign language, you could possibly use that, or find somebody maybe in their family that does know sign language.
Okay? Unfortunately, our language lines have a really hard time with getting someone on the line who can interpret ASL because you can't see it over the phone line, right? So sometimes it's a good idea to know a little bit of ASL. All right, what about with a visually impaired patient?
You're gonna have to explain things really well.
Because they can't see what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you could ask them if they can, what they can see?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend who was blind, and everywhere we went someplace, his preferred method of guidance was to be able to have his hand on my shoulder. And beyond that, he didn't want to be touched, guided, or anything unless he was going to actually collide with something, in which case all you had to do is just guide him around the item and tell him, hey, you got a doorway right here, or something.
Visually impaired people are not necessarily completely blind, just like hearing impaired people are not necessarily completely deaf. In most cases, both visually and hearing impaired people are of normal intelligence. So they're going to want to communicate with you just as much as you're going to want to communicate with them. Make sure you explain everything you're doing. I keep thinking I'm going to hit my head, and I know that when he installed it high enough that I won't hit my head, but I still keep thinking I'm going to. Explain everything you're doing. Also, once you've begun talking to your patient who is physically or visually impaired, you should try and maintain some type of physical contact at all times. Because if they are blind, they don't know if you're gone or if you're there, unless you tell them or you show them. And you can show them by just maintaining contact on their shoulder. Don't step on their toes. You know, I mean, I suppose that's a type of physical contact, but we don't really want to cause pain in order to ensure them that we're there. If the patient can walk to the ambulance, you can ask them how they would want to be guided. Some people your friend wanted his hand on your shoulder. Some people want their hand on your arm. You can ask them how they want to be guided.
Another thing he used to annoy Irv is if you got into a conversation concerning him, he wanted to be directly spoken to about him. So if you started talking to somebody else about him in his presence, that would get him riled. He'd be like, hey, I'm right here. Oh, sorry, Irv.
A lot of them have dogs.
A lot of them have dogs. What are we going to do with their dogs?
Transport it if you can.
Yeah, keep him at
Keep
home.
them close.
If the dog will let you.
If you can't transport the dog, what are you going to do with it?
Have to arrange for some way of supplying support to the animal. Find somebody who can watch it, maybe get a police officer to do the transport, or maybe there is a place, maybe there's a plan that they have for these situations.
Yeah, maybe the person can tell you what to do with their dog. If they're conscious, maybe they have an idea of what to do with them. All right. What about non-English speakers?
Call StateCom for a translator.
Use your resources. Are we still recording? Awesome.
Cool. Oh yeah. Look for the kids, because the kids, a lot of times, the children will know English, whereas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we use our resources, we can use StateCom. We can use the kids. We can use our English, whatever foreign language dictionary if we have one. In most of Idaho, the foreign language that's most common is Spanish, right? What else?
Take a foreign language class.
Take a foreign language class. Anything else? How about pointing to the parts of the body? What hurts?
All right.
Does
Yeah,
your shoulder
gesture-
hurt?
Yeah, there's the old gesture thing.
All right.
But that gives you a tough way to go when you're trying to figure out consent.
Does give you a tough way to go when you're trying to figure out consent. What are you going to do?
As best you can.
As best you can. So if you can't talk to someone because you can't speak their language, how are you going to determine whether or not you have consent?
Depends on the feedback they give you.
Depends on the feedback they give you. What else?
Point to the ambulance and
Go. Go. Okay. You can do thumbs up, thumbs down. If you absolutely cannot figure out whether they consent or not, err on the side of care. It's much, much easier to defend taking care of someone than it is to defend not. I'm going to add that little thing over here to my quotes. Err on the side of care. Like that. Short, it rhymes, makes sense. Okay, what is on your PCR? What do we need to worry about on our PCR?
What we did to the patient.
What we did with the patient?
any care we provided and the results of that care.
Okay, so patient care,
Patient identification.
patient response,
Their complaint.
patient complaint. What else?
Vital signs.
Vital signs,
Patient information. Any special needs or directions, basically,
for
for the
who?
patient.
For the patient?
Allergies or something.
Allergies or religious things or anything that another care provider might need.
Might also be your response timelines.
Okay. So we have administrative information that's included on the report. What else?
level of consciousness.
There might also be a refusal portion of your PCR, might be on the back.
There are demographics. So, I mean, I guess that's
Okay.
kind of in there, I guess. But
That's going to go kind of right here.
yeah,
What about our scene size up? Why is that an important part of a PCR?
Yeah, as part of your narrative, it'll set the scene for description of exactly how you found the patient, were they sitting up, were they lying down, were they in a position of danger, were they talking to you, were they whatever it may be. 'Cause
Yeah.
then everything, when you say what you had, what you discovered, then you can make that next logical progression to what you did about it.
Correct. So if you had all of this information, the patient care you provided, your patient's response to the care, their chief complaint, their vital signs, their protected health information, all of their billing info, their needs, their history, administration info, response info, level of consciousness and level of responsiveness, you had all of this, and you were missing the scene size up, would it make sense?
you wouldn't know why you did all that stuff.
You wouldn't have any idea why you did all that stuff. So this is a super important component of your patient care report. Whether it is, we got dispatched to a 1050 PI, showed up, one vehicle rollover, vehicle on its top, no fluid leaking from the vehicle, patient sitting on the side of the road. I mean, I still didn't tell you how fast that vehicle was traveling. I didn't tell you whether I was on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere or I was on a 4-lane highway. All of those things are important when you get into determining whether or not the care was appropriate, etc. So I gave you a fairly decent picture, right? But I didn't include other important considerations. When we're working on our PCR, and this more applies to handwritten PCRs, which are really almost a thing of the past now, but when you're working on your PCR and you make a mistake, how do you correct it?
One line.
Just a single line and your initial. If you do this,
You're obliterating it, and that could be interpreted as you're trying to hide something.
yep,
Not good on a legal document.
You also want to put, if you did transfer care, who you transferred it to.
yes, transfer of care. Okay. Do you want to go ahead and press stop?